People of faith serve right here at home. They also serve all around the world. So today on Austin Faith Dialogue, we're talking about a life in mission. Stay with us.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
We're glad you're here today on Austin Faith Dialogue when we're talking about a life in mission, and specifically a life in the Philippines. Actually, we have 3 lives in mission today. We have you, Dennis Decano. You're a facilitator with MCRD, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
And George and Wanda Holcomb, United Methodist Missionaries to the Philippines. Good to have you. Let's set the stage a little bit, simply talking about a life in mission, George. Let me ask you first. Describe the life of a missionary. I know it's not typical, not every life is the same, but what has it been for you?
Well, I think it's different for everybody, but for me, it's been very exciting to work with local people who have very, very little, who are very poor, who happen to be the majority of the people of the world, who for the most part are very humble and very open people, who are anxious to see their lives made better, who are struggling to do that. It's a lot of work. You get up early, you stay up late. A lot of times you get caught in floods, or you get to sleep on bamboo mattresses. But it's worth it.
And Wanda, you can talk a little bit, I know, about what it's like to get to be a missionary, to have these interesting days that George has described. How do you get there?
Well, we've been doing this since 1970, so we've had a lot of different varieties of experiences, but in particularly with the Methodist Church, you're on a 3-year contract kind of basis. So in order to prepare for that, you have a training kind of time, and at that time they also prepare you for all the health things you need, and they make sure that you have all of the shots and everything you need if you're going to a country that has a lot of different, environmental situations. Also, if you need English or as a training for a second language, or you need another language where they're spoken, you'll even have months of training in another language. We've been fortunate that in the places we've been, we've had an opportunity to work with bilingual people who, in all of our work, we're interested in having people help themselves, and so we're always working with people like Dennis who are bilingual. We've had our children with us in the past, and that's been always an exciting time. In the Methodist Church, there's very good care for children in their education, possibilities for them. As a family, we've always had a job, we've always worked together, as well as an opportunity to celebrate as a family and experience what culture is there. Our children are now grown now, and they talk about their time when we were in other countries as a great time and opportunity for their experience in life.
Sounds like all this has created really some global citizens.
Yes.
And then, Dennis, you are from the Philippines.
Yes.
So, but I would say from our earlier conversations that you are also a missionary. So what has that journey toward working with the church, expressing your faith that way, what has that journey been like for you?
Well, I guess it's like being a runner in a marathon, if I could use that metaphor. You go through a lot of different laps, And I guess in this marathon, the difference is that we have the baton. And in my case, I come from a younger generation. And with the elders now passing the baton on to younger missionaries, I guess the challenge there is how we could run our course and do it to a finish when it's our turn to pass the baton. And as Wanda and George have aptly put it, it's quite a sacrifice. But then, of course, that's where your joys and your accomplishment and your fulfillment comes in. When you see people gaining from all the hard and smart work you give not only for your own self-glory, but for everybody's benefit. And, you know, it goes a long way.
And to be in mission yourself, what kind of training did you need to do the work you do?
I think in this kind of training that I went through, I'm so appreciative of how the Holcombs have been mentors, and I guess, yeah, mentors, and they've shown me the way through example, because we go through a community. They first, it's a 3D method. First, they demonstrate on how we should do it, and then we go and then we debrief. They tell me the different steps to do it, and then they go tell me, do it. So it's a very good method of apprentice or a disciple, I guess, to very good mentors.
Mm-hmm. Now, you two have been in mission for a long time, for a couple of decades here. How have you seen the role of the missionary, the traditional missionary who comes from another country and goes to a second place? How have you seen the role of that person change?
Well, early on, the church sent folks to be pastors, and the wives, quite often in those days, they weren't eligible to be pastors, so they taught Sunday schools or played the organ or whatnot. Today, those roles really belong to the local people, and so you go as in support, you go as a consultant. Most of our work is done in trying to bring methods to people to where they can have a better life. And with Dennis and others, we go to villages, we do consults where they get out a plan book, and then we try to help them facilitate those plans over a period of time and help them to get the kind of resources they need in order to develop. But it's a different kind of feel and different kind of thing than probably missionaries did 50, 60 years ago.
Sounds to me more like colleagues than missionary and person that the mission is coming to. Now, we've alluded a little bit to the MCRD, the Methodist Commission on Resource Development. Wanda, can you talk a little bit about what that agency is?
It's a part of the Methodist Church in the Philippines that has 3 Episcopal areas. And as a part of their overall structure in those 3 Episcopal areas, this is a commission that relates to all of those Episcopal areas in the Philippines. So that means we cover 7,000 islands. That not quite, but in that regards, we do work with all areas in that, of the work wherever is needed. In that regards, there is a board appointed by the Methodist Church who are considered guides, are professional people who are there to assist and help in that relationship. And in that aspect, they are the ones then who are the ongoing people who help in terms of the overall seeing that. I guess it's been 1986 that's been going on, and people have been participating in that particular aspect, but they're all volunteers. Mm-hmm. Dennis is the first person who has been a paid staff, which we're very excited about. Doctors and lawyers and nurses, teachers, professors, lay people and clergy are all a part of this commission in terms of working with villages to help them help themselves. And as we talked about before, there is a plan, a design in which they then create what it is they want to see happen with their village. And MCRD is the facilitator for that training and for that to happen. And then afterwards, the follow-up is done by those people there who've participated in that consult to help them access whatever they may need in relationship to that plan.
That sounds very much to me like what Paulo Freire was trying to do with concientización. Is that the same kind of model?
A lot of it is. I think we go a little bit beyond that in terms of trying to give them very practical steps of how to do economic, cultural, and political development. A lot of the communities, and they're all different, some because of the way they make decisions, they're not going to get very far into the future because they make terrible decisions. So sometimes you have to work there. Sometimes there's not the economic possibilities there, so sometimes it's exploring that. Sometimes they need adult education to where they can get the kind of information to where they can do better farming, or where they can begin to look at cottage industries or relating to other industries in the neighborhood that they could do something with.
So it's very much tailored to each individual area
Oh,
where
yeah.
you're working.
Has to be.
And Dennis, you have just, I understand, come back from some specific training in Phoenix.
Yes, that's right.
What was that training, and what specifically do you see being able to take back to your work with MCRD?
I just went through a 6-week-long training in Phoenix, Arizona. And it's a training on the technology of participation. And since we share methods with the communities in the Philippines on how they could come together from different sectors and come up with a common vision, a common way of doing things, and a common understanding of how the future should be, or for them. So the technology of participation adds to the methods that we are sharing. It helps enhance the knowledge, the attitudes, the skills and habits, not only of us, the facilitators who share the methods of self-help, but also for the people to realize that there is a way of getting out of this poverty, and it's within them. And the methods help them to become conscious of this power from within. And as facilitators, I went through a 6-week-long training. I guess it really shook me a bit on how I could enhance further my skills in doing this.
Do you have maybe one example of a skill you've enhanced?
Yeah. I said we do facilitation. And facilitate, it is not just telling people what to do. See, a skill of facilitation would be getting people's shared awareness on the situation and then work through that and get them to share an agreement or a consensus towards coming up with a shared action. So it's quite vague, but I guess in a practical situation, it's more of getting them to talk about it and you guiding them in their discussion and them deciding in the end that, yes, we will do this.
I'll be interested to see how you measure that, too, how you understand that you are more effective now after 6 weeks of training.
Yeah. Well, I hope that coming back after 2 months, I've been spending 2 weeks with the Holcombs visiting churches who have supported us. I hope that after 2 months we could start contextualizing, appropriating, and popularizing these methods. Filipinos are a lot more expressive. You know, we really have this heart for things. And so to get us down to the level of being practical and let's think about it thoroughly, you know, give it some further thought, and then perhaps from there move on towards expressing our passion. I guess we would gauge that in the behavior of the patterns of behavior that the people will be undergoing, who will be undergoing this kind of training.
Right. You should be a different person when you go back. We've got another half a show of conversation here, so stay with us for the second half of Austin Faith Dialogue. We're glad you're here today on Austin Faith Dialogue as we talk about a life in mission. We have 3 guests, Dennis Decano and George and Wanda Holcomb, all working in the Philippines. And to set the stage for your specific work, I know you brought a video clip along, so we're going to take a look at that as a way of introducing the viewers to this work.
talk about would be in terms of improved livelihood. So, and like a credit union that we've heard about before, and new kinds of incomes and new factory types of factory jobs.
Nabanggit sa amin ng isang taon ang mga pangarap na gusto ninyo. At tungkol sa ekonomiya, no? Ikaunlad ng ating kabuhayan, nabanggit yung pangailangan ng isang credit union, yung nagpapautang. At ganoon din naman, nabanggit din sa amin ng mga kasamahan natin.
What you've just seen is one of the many meetings conducted by American and Philippine consultants of the MCRD, Methodist Commission on Resource and Development of the Philippines Central Conference, United Methodist Church, to review the progress of the development plan of Philippines villages known as barangays, called the consult process. It aims to assist economically deprived people in less developed nations, not through simple handouts, but by bringing in the methods of the modern world.
People that are successful and are able to do things because they know certain methods. The most important capital that anybody has in the world today is if they know the methods of how things work in the 20th century.
Precisely focused on such methodology, the consult process of MCRD is one that has been successfully used in villages and small communities in Southeast Asia and even in changing population areas of large cities in the United States for more than 20 years.
Recognize that whenever you're talking about vision and establishing a vision and trying to help the people to get to the point where they know they can raise themselves up, you have to increase their expectations first. So therefore, anytime you're doing that, there's a risk that they won't succeed. But at least they have the opportunity to do it.
The Filipinos have a custom called bayanihan. It is a custom whereby people in a village help somebody in a village who has a special need. For example, building a house. Now that method was largely lost in many urban areas where people do not know. Now through this method, people are brought together and together they discover what they can do for themselves as a community.
Sounds like a wonderful, exciting process, and we've talked around it a little bit. So, George, maybe you can talk specifically about the consult process. What is it?
Well, it's a 5-step method that probably all of you use on a daily basis, and a lot of people don't realize. But a lot of folks in the world don't have this method. First, we go to a community and find out if they really want to do this. And we tell them what we'll do and what we won't do, and then they decide and then set a date. It takes 3 to 5 days. You start out by getting the village together as best they can, and they look at their visions. They get out what their visions are, not some expert or somebody else, but theirs. They're gotten up in a public place, usually put up in a chart form where they can talk about it. They write them down. They get clear about their visions. Then they look at their contradictions. What's stopping them from getting at their vision? And after they've done that, and that's hard because there are blocks inside you and in the community as well as external. But they've got to get clear about that or they will be Pollyanna in trying to do anything. Then the strategies, what are the broad steps, the programs and things like that they have to put into being if they're going to deal with these contradictions. And then probably the toughest part is getting down the little bite-sized tactics that you're going to do every day in teams or as individuals to make this happen, and you put it on a timeline. And that's difficult, especially in the third world, where you live from kind of a sun-up to sundown mentality, to have a 3-month timeline, and this is what you're going to do. And then you've got to get your budget and find out how much is this going to cost, where you're going to get the money, and then the fun begins because you start facilitating that, and every week you sit down and look through the tactics, what people have accomplished, what have they missed on, and then how do they retacticize constantly until they get muscle about seeing they can actually do what they envision, and then they have incredible power.
You've been working with the project a number of years, Dennis, and I wonder if you have a success story built on the methods here?
Yeah. The video clip that you saw on, just a minute ago was about this village called Santa Maria in Cavite, a province near Metro Manila. Manila is the capital of the Philippines. And 13 years ago, these people were former squatters, people who didn't have their own homes, living in Manila, placed there by the government. They just land and some huts, I guess, because I wasn't around then yet.
No huts. They
no
had to
huts.
make their own.
Oh, they had to make their own. And they didn't have utilities, their own water, electricity. But when MCRD, through the bishop or the church, decided that we have to do our part, contribute on how we could assist these people, this is when the consult methods went into play. And through their use and the facilitation of these methods until now, if we go back there, I was there around 2 months ago before I came here. And you can see that the people have decided, put upon themselves this kind of development that they're having. They're now the center of a very big economic district where you can find now a medical school that's quite known. Some people, even outside the Philippines, come there and study. And they have their own bridges, because in the past they didn't have those. And around their community, which was formerly, just plain ground and no utilities, are now sprouting out dozens of different subdivisions. I mean, middle to upper middle class subdivisions. And who would imagine that people like them could start something like this? Getting interest from other people, especially investors, to come in and start making a change, not only economically, but I guess culturally and politically within that place. And they're still around. Their children, who may have been part of that video, one of them I've met, and she's now a graduate, and she was once a sickly baby during that time, and now she's a very young, beautiful woman who's now working in Manila. And she has shared with us also the experience of how they went through this change, this metamorphosis from seeming despair or desperate situation to a more success story, a rags to riches thing.
A really powerful process in little bitty steps.
The good thing for me in this is that when you go back, people don't say, look at what you've done.
Yeah.
They say, look at what we did. And they have deep pride in what they've done.
And where has this whole process been exported? I'd be hard-pressed to see where it couldn't be used. So who else has picked up on this process, Wanda?
Well, by all different aspects. One of the things that Dennis had said, these particular methods are used by business now. They're used by educators. They are used by teachers. Anybody who finds that they're interested in helping people help themselves. One of the key things that we found in working in a village, you have to work with people, all the ages, not just one section, and not just with education, but you work with the cultural aspect, with education and health, as well as the economic, as well as the decision-making process. So when we go back and we look at villages and we talk about them, the farmers are using these methods to try to discern how they're going to work with their crops and develop them. The teachers they've started preschools, they've started health clinics, and the people who else has used these are villages next to them. The exciting thing about replication of this project, because we worked with probably over 55 villages or more across the Philippines, are the villages outside see that they have done it, not supposedly some others coming in from the outside doing for them, and they say, hey, can you come help us? So the replication takes place, and they become what we are as well, the trainers of the trainers, is what I like to put. Right. But there's partnership as well. Even though we're trainers of the trainers, we just don't avoid or set aside. We are there at the background, or they're participating at the same time. And so I think it's exciting to see how the replication process then is important to everybody in that regard.
And that you're still walking with them.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, what would you want to see happen? How do you want to see MCRD grow? What does the future look like?
It's very exciting, and I think it's very bright, especially for the new generation of Filipinos coming in. The median age of Filipinos right now is, the median age in the Philippines is 18, and we're talking of half the population below 18. And so just imagine educating people, young people, on these methods, and they inculcating it throughout their lives, starting now. And it won't be a dramatic change. It will take, I guess, a generation. But if we start doing this, showing them it can be done by individuals and by specific communities, then I guess by example and by the fruits that we're producing here, people will start listening, start doing their part.
And let me ask for an opinion then from someone outside the Philippines. What's your dream for MCRD, George?
Well, that the church, in the broadest sense, and the church there is very concerned about the poor. That practical expression where they can really make something happen. So often the church does not meet with that kind of success because it's a different kind of approach. That spread, and not just to Methodists, but to Catholics and to Presbyterians and all. And I think it's feasible.
Certainly. How can folks here in the United States be part of the process, Wanda?
Well, one of the processes in terms of MCRD is what we call advanced special as a part of the Methodist structure. People can donate funds that help to access to these consults. They also can go and take visits, what we call volunteers in missions. As you saw in the video, from the very beginning, there have been teams of people who have gone to help with this. There's a gentleman right now who's volunteering 6 months to go and help in the Wesleyan University there in computer training. What other ways can you think of that people might be of help?
Well, entrepreneurs are really always great, because if you have somebody who has the gift of seeing how people can build businesses, build successes, they have eyes that I don't have, and they can see what can happen. And folks like that, there are many, many opportunities for people to go and share with other people.
Folks can pray, folks can give, folks can come walk along with you, right?
Sure.
Well, Dennis and George and Wanda, thank you. It's been good to have you here, and thank you for joining us this week on Austin Faith Dialogue.
Thank you.